three main ways of making money here. We can obviously the financing arena. The spectrum there is pretty vast, anywhere from startup financing to a guy just starting a practice to expansion monies needed to grow his practice, which might include new equipment, secondary practices, practice acquisitions, real estate financing, which I know you guys have a great program for. There's a ton of different types of financing requests we see on a day-to-day basis. And then secondarily, these practices that may be for sale in your area. We've had great success with guys out there who just have some sort of feel within the community for the doctor that's retiring.
Well, let me mention that. I think that the dentists, the majority of dentists now have been in practice for north of 20 years, 25 years even. There was this giant number of dentists that went into practice and that they're getting to the point of retirement. There's a huge transition that's taking place. And what they generally will do is, so if you see a guy or a gal, someone in there look like they're in their 50s, but certainly 60s, chances are they're going to be retiring. And what they do is they'll try to bring an associate in who will then buy out the practice, and you can finance that associate. And there's already existing practice with cash flow that will be used to make this loan. And those are very, very good ideas. And then you've got guys that want to buy additional practices. Sometimes they'll already have several and they want to buy more. And that's very common. So I would go to the people that already have multiple practices and talk to them about this.
Yeah, and it's not always the associate that wants to buy. Some people are just made to be employees, and that's the way it goes. But oftentimes the seller wants to sell to the associate, or wants to sell to just sell his practice. He doesn't have an associate, and they need a buyer. And that's where the other side to what I'm talking about comes in. We have a national database. We have buyers. For instance, like California is so lopsided for us that we have about 30 buyers to one seller. They don't even go up into any sort of listing or any sort of marketing. They sell immediately. So what I'm getting at is that a lot of times these guys want to sell their practice. Well, there's a lot that needs to be done within the transition of selling their practice, between the buy-sell contract, between setting up the financing, between all the transferings of the ownership, between procuring the buyer. So we can assist on that, and that would be something where you could probably make some really good money by trying to get some practices for sale, if that's an opportunity you do come across.
I want to go back for a second to the financing options.
Sure.
We talk about equity out loans up to 50% of gross revenues is cash out. What are you talking about there?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's probably one of the other most popular products, because there's oftentimes a guy needs to either pay some sort of taxes or do something personally, or he wants to go ahead and buy maybe some real estate, and he doesn't necessarily have that 10% down. So we've been able to come in and say, okay, this practice is grossing $1 million gross revenues. Doctor can get up to 50% of those gross revenues as just a flat-out check to him. So it's kind of, we know that a practice on average, specifically in dental, national average for the dental practice appraises, a practice will appraise for roughly 65% of gross collections. So it's kind of a rule of thumb. We know that practice is probably worth $650,000, or 65% of its gross. We'll come in and give that guy 50% of his gross revenues as a check to him. So we've seen guys take that money, pay off personal credit cards that they wouldn't normally be able to pay off, use that money for the down payment of purchasing some commercial real estate, or potential tax obligations forthcoming. We've seen them pay that. So there's, who doesn't want some cash in some particular cases? On that type of financing, you have to note that that most all of these loans we're talking about require a first lien position. So if there's some sort of, an original startup loan that's $80,000 or a practice acquisition loan that's in the first lien priority, we have to pay that out, and then the doctor would receive whatever the remaining balance is.
And so, these are liens that are typically they're UCC filings. They're not real estate liens because a lot of times they don't own real estate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly it. There's two different types of liens. There's one that's business specific, and then one that's real estate specific. So when we do the UCC lien search, we'll specifically state to this business and this address. So the UCC lien search that comes back would be specifically targeting any type of outstanding debts or obligations that business has, not the real estate.
Yeah. Okay. That's so it's a lien on their receivables and on everything to do with the business. And if they didn't pay conceivably, you could foreclose and take over the business, the practice itself.
Correct. And that brings up a good point. I mean, in our history, we've really only had maybe in the past 15-year snapshot, we've had 3 loans that have had any sort of distress to them, and
wow.
twice they turned out that we sent them to the other division and we just sold the practices. So that's kind of the logic behind it. If we all of a sudden had to sell the practice, we could get it to the other division, and we know that fair market value rule of thumb nationally is roughly 65% of gross collections.
Okay. Okay. Great. All right. And so you're saying, okay, so we're talking about practice sales. Now we're talking about insurance, and I don't know if too many people are going to be interested in this, but tell us what you have in mind on insurance, just so we get a feel for the flavor of that.
Well, pretty much every loan that we do requires some sort of insurances, whether it be property, general business overhead insurance, malpractice insurance, life insurance. A lot of these loans, and if you're even not even so much in the space of medical, but in any type of acquisition, any type of business, SBA loan, if you're structuring a loan, SBA, whatever the case is, you're going to, more than likely the borrower is going to be required to have life insurance, some sort of business insurance. So usually in particular cases where we're already so involved in the financing and we've got so much information from the borrower, it's an easy jump over into the application process of getting the insurances that are required for closing out the loan.
What our students going to do is they're going to obtain a lead, and we have a form for them to fill out.
Yeah.
And then if you sell them some insurance, they're going to get some commission on that.
Yeah, that's correct. And I'll send out a subsequent flyer to you guys on exactly what I can do on that. It varies so greatly on the commissions and the type of product and this and that. And I'll get something to you there so you can share with the group and get it in everyone's hands.
Hey, George, just out of curiosity, is that something available in all 50 states?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. But you handle all aspects of that part.
Yes. Do I personally? I'm. Yeah. No. The company exactly. The company. it's different divisions, different people that process things, but yes, we can handle the insurances. So in summary, the three different ways to make money here are all the different types of financing in the medical marketplace, and then any type of listing or any type of business for sale, or even a potential buyer that says, hey, I'm looking for a practice over in such and such area. We can find a buyer. So the marriage of buyer and seller, and then thirdly would be any type of insurance needs, whether it be medical or even any type of loan on the outside. So that's kind of until any new product developments, that's it for now.
Let's talk about general loan parameters. 100% financing, up to 10 years fixed, working capital included, graduated payments. Maybe you can talk to us about that, because this is very intriguing.
Yeah, no, that's in the 10-year, that's changed to 15 years now. Startup financing is going to be maximum term is going to be 10 years. But in acquisition or a consolidation loan, we can go up to 15 years. Let's see. If someone came to me and said, I want a startup loan, I would say, okay, that's great. We have 100% financing. Some of the other highlights would be that we have graduated payments, whereas we can structure maybe the first few months at $0, the following 3 months at, let's say, $1,000, and then the remaining part of the year for $1,500, so kind of a step payment plan. And that's 100% financing. The doctor gets approved. They go ahead and have the documentations out of the way. They have what's called an open finance agreement. They pay as they go, whether it's the contractor that helps them out, and then the equipment supplier, and then, just office furniture. We pay, and then finally close out the loan. So that would be kind of what you could expect on a normal startup transaction. Then on a debt consolidation loan, we can go up to 15 years and up to 90% of gross collections. And that's 90% is kind of, I wouldn't always go out and say it's up to 90% of gross collections, because it really, that does put a sort of a strain on the cash flow model that we have to have. But I would say, a good 70% it gets complicated. But anyways, as far as the consolidation goes,
well, the fact is that the doctor's practice has to be able to pay for the expenses of the business and the salary of the doctor and all of that. And
yeah,
so, I mean that type of underwriting, I would imagine, is pretty typical.
Yeah, in the underwriting, it's I'm glad you brought that up. The underwriting, typically, we have to at least have a 660 credit score. That's important. On all loans, we have to minimally be 660. If it gets below 660, I can kind of bend the rule